We are back with another Playful Humans podcast, and I'm your host, Mike Montague, and we're at playfulhumans.com. If you want to rediscover the power of play, find your playful personality and passions, go check that out at playfulhumans.com. And my guest this week is Jamie Chalmers, Mr. Cross-Stich. We're going to talk to him about doing cross-stitch, making art, and his new role as a Santa Claus, doing the good work of spreading those messages back to the man himself. I want to find out how he plays for a living, how he leans into the art of cross-stitch, and all kinds of good stuff. Here we go. Don't wait for tomorrow. Now we look too similar. We dance the same way. Jamie, we like to start with the joke of the week. The joke of the week this week is brought to you by affectionate French chefs. They will give you a hug and a quiche. French chefs. Okay, here's the official joke. Why did the raisin go out with the prune?
I have no idea.
Because it couldn't find a date.
Oh, nice. I'm writing that down.
See what I did there? Do you have a joke for us?
I usually have lots of dad jokes that I try out. I've got one about umbrellas at the moment, but it keeps going over people's heads.
Nice. I love that one. Did you hear about Snoop Dogg's new umbrella?
Go on.
It's for drizzle.
There you go. Very good.
That'll get us started. Now, tell me about Cross-Stich. How did you find this, and did you ever expect it to be a thing?
No. So this is a bit of a mystery. Sometimes I still don't understand it. 2003, I was going on a long haul flight to Canada, wanted something to do on the plane. And I went into a haberdashery shop and I saw this cross-stitch kit and I just thought it'd be funny. I was like, look at the size of me. I'm big. I've got a face only a mother could love. I was like, I'll buy a cross-stitch kit. Imagine what people will say on the plane. And when I got to Canada and I finally had to go with it, I kind of fell in love with it almost instantly. Because the thing about cross-stitch, it's a very simple needle craft, but it's also very repetitive. You're just doing simple stitches. You're putting them through holes that are already in the fabric. And so it really slows you down. And it's really kind of like we talk about mindfulness, but this is like super meditative and super relaxing. And it really like stirred something in my soul without wishing to get too hippie about it. But I just got this like feeling. I was just like, oh, this is really nice because... So I'm going to get a bit sciencey. When you meditate, your mind wanders and you're supposed to come back to center all the time, right? Now, when you are cross-stitching, every half a second or so, you're having to come back to center to look where you're putting the needle. So you're always being in the present in like every single moment. And then you're making something on top of that. And so I just sort of fell in love with it. And then I decided to make my own patterns because I was a guy in my 30s at the time and I couldn't find designs that I wanted because it was like wizards or race cars and I wanted like street art and stuff. So I started making my own designs and in 2008 I launched an Etsy store and then I decided to do a blog off the back of that called MrXStich. And I just saw at first I was like writing about myself, but then I started featuring other people's art and then I decided to sort of showcase like work that was a bit edgy. So sometimes we would do, I used to have themed columns, right? So we had a thing that was called Not Safe for Work Saturdays, where we would show needlework that was inappropriate. But we would have a big safety picture. It'd have like a picture of a cute dog and a big warning. It would say, this might upset you. Click on the dog if you want to see the rude stuff so people couldn't complain about it. And I also coined the phrase stitchgasm, which is when you see a needlework and it gives you like a visceral response. So we used to have those. And it all kind of went from there because I was a guy in the UK being over about needlework and then doing my blog and just getting around. Like I sort of became like craft famous. So I can say to you, Mike, I am probably the most famous male cross stitcher you will meet. But I would ask you to name another single male cross stitcher. And it like categorizes my fame into a very small box.
You're definitely in that bucket, but I find it fascinating because of so many things you've already mentioned. I like Lego. We both have our passions behind us here for a very similar thing. This one has over 10,000 pieces that are just placed, and you have to look where you're going and pay attention, and you
Mm.
feel like you've made something at the end. You didn't mention that, but one of the coolest things I think about craft projects in general is you feel like there's something to show for it at the end, right? If you just scroll on social media and Instagram for an hour, you're done. You don't particularly feel good about it, and there's nothing to show for it. You've not improved it or made anything. And just the art of building something in real life that you can then give away or display or just even throw away and start over.
Yeah.
Those kind of things, I think, give a tangible real life sort of effect to this, right? Can you describe that at all?
Yeah. 100%, 100%. So just to sidetrack slightly, I remember once I completed Final Fantasy VII, the video game, put 150 hours into that bad boy. It finished.
Yeah.
I looked around, nothing much had changed. So, but when you do cross stitch, no matter what it is, you can make something that you can give to someone you love. You can make, if it's someone that you like who always says the same thing, you can make them a catchphrase. You can make a nice thing for your gran. I used to say it's always good to make something that makes your mum cry, but for a good reason, for a change, which is always nice. But you can just express yourself. Thanks to the kind of software that I use, you can take images of family members and mix them together, and basically the sky's the limit. And I think this is what's exciting. And you end up with something tangible. You end up with something, if you want to go down the sampler route, you can produce a family history type thing. There's lots that you can do that are really tangible reminders of things, because if you think about things like the Bayeux tapestry and various other famous needleworks, they survive. They're really like long lasting memories of these things in a way that a digital photo album just isn't. So not only do you get the pleasure of making and the mindfulness of it, but you get something that will make a friend cry with joy.
Yes, the good kind. Now, speaking of crying, I wanted to ask you about needles, because you mentioned you're a big guy. I'm 6'2", 200 and some and I don't know what that is in stone, but I find like really intricate work challenging. Are there special like needles and equipment that you use as like a guy with big hands that's different than others, or have you learned to I
think you learn the finesse. You do learn the finesse. So there are things you can do. I mean, you can get magnifying equipment, daylight bulbs with magnifying lenses and stuff, which do make the job easier. And there's no shame in that. I used to think it was a sign of weakness, and then I started using them. I was like, I can see what I'm doing. It's amazing. But I mean, most of the time, so tapestry needles are quite sort of fairly large anyway, because the holes in the fabric isn't too intricate. Some types of needlework, you have very small needles to get through very fine fabric. With this, it's a bit easier. What I quite like to do, though, is get the blokey versions of things. So I like having gold-plated needles because they're a bit gangster. I like having like matte black scissors. And what I used to do when I used to stitch on the train, and I should tell you all about that, I would often like stick the needle in my jeans just when I was changing threads, because your jeans can handle it. But sometimes I'd make like a little wincing noise as though I just stuck it in my leg because I'm so tough, because I'm a man doing stitching, And like in the UK, you don't talk to strangers on trains. I don't know how it is in the States, but we don't do that. That's hard enough anyway.
Try to avoid it as much as possible. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And people will hide behind their papers. What I used to like doing was I would take cross stitch on a train with me and sit down at a table, and then the person opposite me would be looking everywhere except 100% where I was, because they're like, I can't comprehend what's going on, and I'm British, so I can't even ask the guy. Do you know what I mean? It's just like too weird for them to comprehend or something. But then it also works like if you're a guy cross stitching, if you're anybody cross stitching, right? Because this isn't a gender thing. I've used my novelty to get where I am, but I love cross stitch. And if I can make somebody try it because I'm a bit funny or because of my attitude towards it, then they can try it. They can feel that inner peace. Yeah. But if you do it on a plane and it's a long haul flight, you're more interesting than the average to the cabin crew, which speeds up your Jack Daniels and Coke return time, which is a very important factor on a long haul flight.
Yes, I totally love that. And I think that's part of what this show is really about, like geeking out on your passions and leaning into it and being unusual, a little weird, whatever you want to call it. I think you said it creates an amazing personal brand, but also makes you stand out and bring value to anybody else. Right. I think I want to ask you about that, and just tell me about some of the benefits that you've seen of being a gangster cross stitcher.
I think the main thing for me, right, is there's this story that we're told over time for various reasons that cross stitch is what old ladies do and that needlepoint's just a craft and it's not very exciting. And what I'm able to do, because I'm a guy with tattoos who does it, I can suspend your disbelief because I can go, I'm clearly not a little old lady. But what that does is that suspension of disbelief then gives me the chance to showcase the world of needlework to you. Because as well as doing cross stitch, and I produce a digital cross stitch magazine called MrXStich, which is modern and interesting. But I also curate textile art, so I've put on exhibitions and my blog features a lot of art. And so I'm able to show you, modern lace, machine embroidery that's really cool, loads of stuff, and just really push at this whole needlework isn't an art form debate. I had this thing a few years ago when I went to an Ashmolean museum, which is in Oxford, and I was looking at some Chinese textiles from like 700 BC or something daft. And I remember suddenly realizing that because I'm a man who cross stitches, I've wandered into a socio-political discourse that has been going on for millennia. Because for hundreds of years now, it's been like men do art and women do hobbies and women are small and sit in a corner. And all of that storyline is just rubbish. But by being a guy who's challenging that, I've suddenly entered this thing and I was just like, oh my God, what have I done? This is a really big conversation. but it's interesting, I did a degree in psychology and sociology, and these are stories that we're told. And the thing for me is I love cross stitch. It makes me feel good. I love making things and I'm okay with that. But it's taken a time to process that. So whether you like cross stitch or whether you do flower arranging, or if you're a lady who likes welding or whatever, we get told these stories about the way things are. And when you fall in love with it, like for me, I love it when someone thinks that, it is a little old lady thing, because I'll go, oh, it totally isn't. Let me show you this flaming brain man at a cross stitch or whatever, and just go from there.
I love that. And I wanted to mention your magazine too. If you want to look at what modern cross stitch looks like, go to xstitchmag.com. xstitchmag.com. We'll put the link below where you can subscribe as well. I encourage you to do that and check it out if any of this sounds interesting. But to me, the interesting part is really just the story of it. I love breaking stereotypes, and I love it when other people break stereotypes for me. And it opens up your world and it allows you to rethink some of those things. And as I get older, that's part of what this show is about, is that play is not just for kids. It's not just frivolous and a waste of time. It's what we all should be doing, because nobody really set out to be like, oh, I want to work really hard when I grow up. Like, no, we wanted to, we're supposed to work to make time so that we could play and do the stuff that we really love, not the other way around. Somehow we got along that we're supposed to work and just work really hard. And then if there's any time left over, we should play and pursue a hobby or do cross stitch or something. But I wanted to ask you about your experience. Have you, I'm assuming you go to a lot of cross stitch stores or conventions or other things, and you've shown up in these places. Do you still get interesting looks? What was it like the first time for you emotionally, and how quick was it? Pretty fun, if people are saying like, oh, where's your wife? Or did you come with your mother to this thing?
My wife, my wife, or as I like to call her, don't call her MrXStich. She loves that, because people are always like, oh, are you crafty? And it's like, well, she is, but it's not automatic. I think it's really interesting. So I once did ballroom dancing classes with my wife when we were first courting, and that puts me really out of my comfort zone. And I hated it, but at the same time, upon reflection, I loved it, because it makes you grow, doesn't it? It makes you change as a person. And I think that's what's really important here. So it was the same, the first time I ever went to an embroiderers guild group, or the first time I ever went to, we have this thing called the Knitting and Stitching Show. So it's like a big event, going there and talking to people about it and slowly coming out of my shell about it. The thing of doing cross stitch on the train, like that was big, because you suddenly feel like everybody's looking at you, and I would go and sit and stitch in public and go through the pain to come out the other side to prove that it's kind of all right. And then it makes you a better person. But I just think it's really important. And I just think it's like, if I can do it and show people that it's okay to do it, it doesn't matter what the medium is. I just want people to try those things. I want people to try all the things. And what's great about cross-stitch in particular is you can try it. It's really low cost. It's really low. It's like takes no effort whatsoever. As long as you can move your arms, you can do it. But not only do you get that pleasure, but as we said right at the start, you can make something fun for somebody. You know, what I remember once a friend of mine made a thing. And it was like this Victorian looking sample of these two people running. And underneath in fancy writing, it said, "You have the pleasant air of a dog in heat," which to me is just like about as good as you can do, you know, because you can just do those things. You can just have a real laugh and you can make
it becomes a little scene, right? I mean, you could do anything that a comic strip could do, right? You can do anything that a painting or a story or a internet meme can do, right?
And what's really rad about Cross-Stitch as well is Cross-Stitch is pixelated. So now you're getting a really nice overlap with pixel art and lots of like retro video game styles. And also in the same way as that's blossomed as an art form, same with Lego. You know, I saw a really, as an aside, I saw a really interesting guy who was doing typography out of Lego pieces, which was a really interesting spin, you know, just taking the ideas and spinning with it. Yeah. So with my magazine, I work with designers from around the world, but I really like working with the pixel artists because they don't come from a cross-stitch standpoint. So their ideas are different in the first place. And it just leads to more, they're a lot braver with their just design aesthetic. And it just means that other people will want to try it.
For you, actually, is I'm assuming once you do break down that kind of barrier and you get comfortable going to these, I'm sure you had to have run into people and be like, "I'm so glad you're here. My husband loves cross-stitch. He won't let me tell anybody, but like, can I get one of your patterns, or can I get like or can I take a picture of your art and stuff to show to these other people that were closeted?" And then you kind of find your own people in that group. Was that your experience?
100%. The thing is, so what also happened, just to go on the backstory a bit, I decided to go on telly. I entered a national TV like competition. It was a needlework competition. I did really badly, but my design was really good. But obviously my novelty kind of worked there. And then I've also written a book called The MrXStich Guide to Cross-Stitch. And I've been on telly a couple or three times, and I've been on the radio and stuff. So like not big level, but every time that happens, you know, people see me and they realize that I'm there doing that thing. So you do exactly what you get. We call ourselves man-broiderers because that's a useful tool as a way of dealing with it, you know, but men who stitch, and there are so many of us that do it, but there are a lot of people that just keep it on the down low because of that sort of general social discomfort. I remember one time when I was on the train stitching, the ticket inspector came past and he sort of saw what I was doing and then walked on. And a bit later, he was walking back up the train again. He walked past really fast and he went, "I do rag rugging," and just like didn't stop, but just kind of carried on moving as if he found this space to confess about this secret craft that he was up to. But you do, there's so many guys that do it. And I just think there's always just a sense of relief. And I think all of us understand what it's like. You know, we're all just people who love our craft and we have to go through this like torment, if you like. But it is just, I guess, for a lot of guys, I mean, now there's never been a better time, you know, because in many respects, the world has never been more diverse and more accepting of these things. So it's easier now. Social media makes it easy to see things and stuff like that. But, you know, I do try and just do that thing of saying, I'm here, I'm doing it. If anybody wants to have a go. And I've taught loads of workshops as well. I've taught hundreds of people to cross-stitch over the years. And sometimes every now and again, I remember there was one like 35-year-old guy who just couldn't get over himself to get into it, you know. But for most people, because I can then give them a cross-stitch, even a design that just says like, "yo," in a graffiti font or something, it's enough of a tool for them to want to do it. So that's usually a good enabler. So I'd say like 95% of the time I can get men to do it. Just holding their hand. "You all right, bruv? We got it."
Some sort of manly design,
and it becomes like therapy as well. That's the other thing,
and you're good to go.
Just touching their shoulders and just saying it's okay. And the thing is it's so funny because in those cases you are like a therapist as well. You're just going, "I know what you're going through here. Just breathe, just get over the hurdle, and then the meditation's going to kick in and you're going to feel good in your soul and stuff." It's so funny.
I have two questions for you. I'm going to let you pick the next one. We can talk about Santa Claus, or we can talk about making a career out of this and playing for a living. Which one would you like to do first?
Do you know what I want to do? I'm going to talk about Santa Claus because it's a very real thing for me now at the moment.
Yeah.
So
your beard doesn't look white enough, but tell me how you got into this.
So this time last year, for the first time, I've got 2 daughters. They're 6 and 4, and I'm involved in their school. And last year, I was Santa at their school Christmas fair for the first time. And it was because someone had thought like couldn't do it, and I was like, okay, we'll give it a little go. I know I can do voices, so I was kind of okay with that. So I did that, and it was fine, and I was like at peace with it, and sort of, you know, quite comfortable about it. And then this year, my wife saw a job vacancy going at one of the UK's biggest theme parks, which isn't very like far from where we live. And just for fun, I thought I'd apply for it because I was already booked up to do the Christmas fair for my kids' school anyway. But I went and applied for this, and I did a little audition, and I got the job. So there's obviously there's only one Santa, and I can't really go into the logistics of it. But one of the most interesting things, talking about our comfort zones, right, that we were talking about before, when I did the first Santa thing, I did an email to my emails newsletter about it because I was just like, I can't feel comfortable about it because I'm not a massive fan of marketing. And so I'm a bit like, am I just encouraging people to buy stuff? Am I too cool to be Santa? That kind of stuff was going through my head. I sat in the costume at home going, drink Coca-Cola. I'm a badass. Just kind of almost like getting this stuff out of my system. And then some of the people replied to me and they were like, no, what you're doing here, whether you're comfortable with it or not, is giving people moments of joy. And I was like, yeah, do you know what? I think you're really right there. And I think that last year I got at ease with it. But then this year, having done it, so I've already done it for 2 weekends straight. I'm doing it Friday, Saturday and Sunday coming up. And then in the final week before Christmas, it's a 10-day stretch and it's 10 till 6 every single day, coming in, doing the same sorts of things. But I kind of love it. And I've kind of got past myself to a point now where I can be at peace with it. The costume that we wear, and this is why I don't have much of a beard, the costume we wear has a big beard and I stick a mustache on and everything. So I had to like unbeard myself so it doesn't get too gummy under there. You have a big costume and I wear a fat suit and we're in a grotto and the music's playing and the elves are bringing everybody in. And then they come through the door and suddenly it's like, hello, how are you? Come and sit by the fire. And I just turn into Santa. And then you say the same things over again, but you just get these different like conversations with people. My favorites are like 7-8-year-old girls who utterly believe everything you're doing. And you're like, now, on Christmas Eve, make sure you're tucked up in bed. I don't want any peeking now. And they're all like, yes, Santa, you know, and they bring you letters and all those sorts of things. And then you get the families with the matching Christmas jumpers. Then you get the teenager. So honestly, some really impressive jumpers. Then you get like the teenager who's like a bit of a non-believer, but they're being dragged in by their family. And you think, well, if I can make them smile, I will do my best, you know. And it's just really fascinating to be a part of that, because on the 23rd of December, I stopped doing that for this year. And then I go back to being normal Jamie Chalmers or whatever. But it's just, it's such a playful thing because it's such a like magical moment that you're giving people. And whether they believe it or not, what's happening is families are coming and having this little ritual. And my job is to make sure that it's as magical as it can be and that the children feel like they're getting what they're expecting. And it's like, it's a big pressure, but at the same time, it's a massive honor. And it's so, yeah, I don't know. I talk about it a lot because I think it's becoming more profound. If that makes sense.
I like that. I was going to make a few comments. One, I think you're very self-aware, and I love that you're exploring this and being aware of the feelings while you're doing it and present. I think maybe not many people are when they're doing those things. They kind of see it as a chore or something, and then it becomes that instead of playful and helpful and meditative and introspective and stuff. Second thing, congratulations on needing the fat suit. That's a big win.
I was pretty pleased when they said that. I was like, come on.
And 3, I do performances as well, and I host like game shows for people, or I'm leading a Lego instruction for a company party and stuff. And I am amazed at how many people really just need like 5 minutes of fun in their life, and like you said, just a laugh, or somebody that's not there trying to sell them something or need something from them, or get them to do something and be a part of a trend or something. I think I admire several things about performers, but one of them is that ability to just be silly, to do a voice, to just let go of yourself and your identity and just play with the moment and do that for other people. And I think, I don't know, what advice would you have for people that haven't done it? For me, when I take on the game show persona, it's almost like an alter ego where, you know, if I see myself as Superman, this like Clark Kent character is somebody that can mess up, can be a bumbling idiot, can be anything, because that's not me. That's the game show host. He tells really bad dad jokes, you know, like I don't do that. I'm okay. I know that I'm intelligent. I can be a professional or whatever if I need to put myself back together. How do you see that? You know, as you said, it's becoming more and more profound. Do you think it's more profound for you or the people that you get to play with?
I think there's a lot to be said for alter egos, you know. So I'm Jamie Chalmers, but then I'm also MrXStich, and MrXStich is a little bit cooler, everybody seems to think. You know, it's a useful version of yourself that you can use, I think. And then when you're in that place, like if I'm leading a workshop, I'll be just a bit more outgoing. Maybe I'm turned up to like a 9, whereas normally I'm like a 7 or something like that. With something like Santa, the illusion's totally there and provided. But then I think it's what's interesting is obviously there's only one Santa, but for instance, you could imagine there might be more than one Santa for logistical reasons so that people can have breaks and stuff. And so you get these different versions of Santa. And I think what's interesting is finding your own Santa, finding your inner Santa. That could be a cross-stich
your inner
Santa.
Santa. Yeah.
And what I've found is that I feel like I'm Disney Pixar Santa. At one point, I was like, I'm stereotypical Barbie Santa, but I'm Disney Pixar Santa because I try and make the parents have a bit of a laugh at the same time, rather than it just being about the kids, because I think the magic has to be kind of universal. And as you said, I think these situations arise. The parents put themselves in these situations because they want that joyful experience, but it's also they are giving themselves permission to do it because their lives might be whatever they are. But for the 4.5 minutes they're inside there, they're in a magical space that they've allowed themselves to do. It sort of reminds me of doing escape rooms. Have you ever done an escape room?
Yeah.
And those are total fun, aren't they? Because you're locked in. You can't get out. You can't have a normal life. You've got to be completely involved. And I did one of those from a birthday once, and it was the most fun I'd had in ages. And I think it's that permissionable setting, isn't it, where people can be. So what we are as the entertainer is we're the facilitator of that. And I think that if you're lucky enough for it to not be a chore, then you can appreciate it. And every time there's a knock on the door of the grotto and I can like reset and go, hello, and we start again. I don't know who's coming through the door, but I've got my little spiel, you know, I've got my, it's like being a stand-up comedian. I've got my certain jokes, you know, oh, what football team do you support? Oh, well, look out for North Pole United. They're doing very well in the Arctic leagues, you know, that kind of thing. And you're just giving them that joy. So if I can know that the people leaving feel really happy with themselves, even if it's just because their kids had an amazing time, whatever it is, like that's been the joy, that's been the magic, that's been the bit that makes it special.
I love it. Now, I did want to ask the other question before we wrap up and play a game. Has this turned into a career for you? I find it fascinating when I interview people like you, because I think there's like different levels of success and artistry and vocations that sometimes people miss what I call like a middle-class creator, that you don't have to be Mr. Beast or whoever your favorite, you know, Tom Cruise is and make $100 million to pay your bills, have a really great life, and talk about cross-stitch for a living. You know, I mean, you don't need millions of dollars to do that, but how has it worked out for you that you have at least made enough money to get to keep doing it for a number of years?
So most of the time when I was being MrXStich, I was bootstrapping the business and I had a job as a project manager for a national children's charity. And the story goes that in 2017, I bought one of those big planners where it's like, write down your dreams. And my dream was become MrXStich full time. And I wrote that down and I didn't think much of it. And about 6 weeks later, got a notice of redundancy from the charity. So it was like, oh. But at the same time, that was when I did a Kickstarter campaign for the magazine. And that was quite a good success. It enabled me to take the redundancy and pivot to doing that full time. So now, thankfully, my wife has a real job, works in the NHS, does a great job. But mine, I'm sort of building a layer cake, and it's getting there, but it's kind of like I have different layers, you know, whether it's ad revenue from my website or subscriptions to the magazine or doing workshops and just putting all these pieces together. But what's been fantastic for me as well is my oldest daughter, Flora, was born a month after I took redundancy. So I've always been able to be around for the girls as well and do most of like the childcare runs and all those kind of things. So I think I'm not fantastically wealthy. We're getting by. but our quality of life is really nice because, you know, I'm able to be there with the girls and support my wife and those kind of things. And I think over time, because everybody in the world does cross-stitch, not everybody, but people around the world do cross-stitch, I feel like eventually it'll get there. But if I stop and think about it, I know that the lights are on, we've got food, everyone's happy, and we're just having a good caliber of experience. So I don't need to bust my gut to become a millionaire yet. I can sort of take my time and maybe become like a 700,000 instead.
Yeah, that's kind of my philosophy too. I think at some point you have to decide what enough money for you is, right? And find happiness or success or a different metric for what that is. And everybody gets to choose their own level. I think that's what's brilliant about it. And I also love that you talked about the different layers, because I think sometimes when people are afraid to do these sorts of things, they are thinking that it's risky, and really having all your income tied up with that one company was the risky part. And now when you have, you know, a magazine and a store and Etsy and all kinds of stuff, like it's really hard to lose 100% of your income. Because you have all these different layers of the cake. So it's actually, to me, more stable and more safe once you build it over time. And it's going to take you years to build a career or a business. You might as well build one for yourself.
I mean, there's a lot to be said for focus. I think if I was honest, I think my business could have been better if I'd have done like 1.5 businesses and given them my all, instead of doing like 4 or 5 things, you know, trying a niche website here, you know, I've got my own podcast, various different streams. But at the same time, you've just got to, part of the dream, I think, is having a layer that makes you money that you don't have to be there for it to happen, you know. So my magazine subscriptions just drop in every month or whatever, and that's a big help. But also, to what you were saying before, there was a Tony Robbins book, I think it's called Money Mastering the Game, and I kind of sped read that at one point. And that was the thing that got me thinking about, we all think we need to be a millionaire, whereas actually if you're able to do the maths and go, what income do I need to have a couple of holidays and a couple of cars and stuff? It isn't £1 million. You don't need £1 million at all. You need much less than that. And to realize that's really freeing. I think a lot of the time, these are the things, it's just really freeing to go, actually, I can relieve myself of that pressure and therefore just allow my creative flow to kind of build without it being in a pressure cooker environment.
It's funny to me how some of these things keep adding up. There's an old parable I've told before, so I'll skip it this time. But, you know, like most people need the car so that they can get to work. But you have to work to get the car. So if you just didn't go to work, you don't need the car in the first place. You know, it's like,
that guy with the fish?
Once you start subtracting some of these things, you're like, oh, I actually don't need that much money or income if I'm doing smart things and I'm not like trying to keep spinning that wheel faster. Right?
I think so, because you can put yourself in the ground working really hard to give yourself the time off, as we were saying before. You know, you can or you can just really give yourself the time off.
Well, you can just take the time off. That's basically what the parable is. Okay, are you ready to play a game?
Let's play a game, man. I'm here.
Here we go. All right, we're doing movie trivia. We surveyed 100 people and asked them to name, some directors, some movies, some actors. You get one of the top answers in 2 out of 3. You win the game here. So I'm going to start with a Brad Pitt movie. Can you name a Brad Pitt movie?
Yeah, 7.
7 comes in at number 3. 8 points for that. Smith came in higher, believe it or not. Fight Club, Interview with a Vampire, Ocean's 11, Thelma and Louise, Meet Joe Black, Troy. A lot of good movies there.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. That was a corker.
Good stuff. Okay. A little bit harder here. Name an actor who played Spider-Man.
Tobey Maguire.
Tobey Maguire, number 1, 58 points for that one. Tom Holland, the new Spider-Man, and Andrew Garfield snuck in there too. All right. This one is a fun one here. Name an actress that's known for being a redhead.
Nicole Kidman.
Nicole Kidman, number 3, 8 points again on that one. Lucille Ball was the number 1 answer. Okay. Still sucking up the majority of those. Amy Adams came in at number 3. Julianne Moore is a good one. We got Deborah Messing, Emma Stone, Isla Fisher. Isla Fisher. I don't even know how to say her name. Okay. La Isla Bonita. Final shot at it here. Jamie, I'll take the easy ones. Follow Jamie at MrXStich, just about everywhere. You can go to xstitchmag.com, register for the magazine, check out what modern cross-stitch is like, and go see some of these cool designs and artworks that he has made. He also mentioned the Etsy store and stuff. Anything else we can do to help you, or you can do to help us, Jamie?
If you like the sound of my voice, you can listen to Needle Exchange, which is my podcast where I interview textile artists about their process and practice. And go and try a craft. Try a craft that you've never done before. You might not like it, but you might fall in love with it, and it might change your life forever.
I love that. Thank you so much for being on the show. And really, that's what we're doing. We're encouraging people to go out and play, and whatever that means for you. There are 10 different play styles, so you can go take the quiz on the website. It's playfulhumans.com/quiz. Maybe you're a joker. Maybe you like to facilitate parties. Maybe you like to explore. Maybe you're an athlete, or you like crafts and games and puzzles. There's lots of different ways you can play and have fun in your life. So go discover them at playfulhumans.com. And as always, share this episode with somebody that you think needs to hear it. We'll see you next time, everybody.
Don't wait for tomorrow. Live for today. Keep on chasing the sunshine.